The Black Rhino. Once with a population in the hundreds of thousands, it's now on the brink of extinction because of man's desire for its horn.
When you buy that rhino horn or when you buy ivory, you are taking this from an animal that has been slaughtered. I think they're extremely ignorant, I think selfish, I think wrong, totally and utterly wrong.
And there's cases of animals which have, you know, taken weeks to die because, you know, the top of their head's literally been cut off and they've slowly rotted away.
But conservationists are fighting back.
There is a shoot to kill policy here, and rightly so, because the guy will fire on him because the stakes are so high.
But they can't do it alone. So who can save the Black Rhino? Mkomazi Game Reserve in the northeast of Tanzania. 40 years ago, hundreds of black rhino roamed these grasslands. By the time conservationist Tony Fitzjohn arrived in the late 1980s, they'd gone, their population decimated by poachers. He was determined to repair the damage.
I chose Mkomazi because it was a complete blank sheet of paper. It was a real mess. It had had 20 years of uncontrolled poaching, burning, cattle moving in, and it was a real mess. And nobody else wanted it. But I was, I guess, lonely enough and desperate enough to take it on, but saw the possibilities of what it might be in the future.
Tony Fitzjohn was a protégé of George Adamson of Born Free fame. When he died, killed by Somali bandits, Fitz, as he's known, came to Tanzania and built the massive reserve by hand.
It wasn't easy. I really did realise in the first week or two that I'd bitten off more than I could chew.
Fitz has built up a population of 14 black rhino by bringing them here from captivity in Europe or elsewhere in Africa. He's viewed as a maverick. His ethos is to see all the rhino return to the wild, yet he still views them as his mates. Yabu came from a zoo in the Czech Republic, but now lives freely in the wild, except when Fitz comes calling.
He's a bit hungry for his carrots tonight.
To ensure his rhinos survive, Fitz needs them to breed and diversify the tiny gene pool he's established. And the answer might lie here in England, deep in the Kent countryside. Port Lympne Wild Animal Park has bred more black rhino in captivity than anywhere else in Europe. It's chosen to donate 3 black rhino to Tony Fitzjohn's project.
Well, I'm a big fan of Tony Fitzjohn. He's completely mad, which I think is a necessary characteristic when you're doing this type of thing. I think is exactly the right home for them.
Why?
I mean, and these rhino need protecting, and you know, he has guards there and eco guards, and I know the project very well.
Damien Aspinall is passionate about protecting endangered species too. He grew up surrounded by animals at the sanctuary his father created.
Come on, Zilly. Come on. There we are. There we are.
He treats them as friends.
There we are. Yes. There we are. Come on.
Hello, pretty.
Oh, look at that.
But friends he's adamant should be returned to their natural habitats.
I believe zoos should not exist unless they truly have a reintroduction ethos and a proper conservation ethos. Otherwise I don't think they should exist. I do not think zoos should be for the entertainment of man.
These are the rhino being donated. Monduli, a 6-year-old male, and 2 females, Zawadi and Grametti, who are 5 years old. They've never known a life outside of captivity. Now they're being prepared for the long journey to Tanzania, where it's hoped they will breed and boost the rhino population at Mkomazi National Park. But the project is not without its risks. The rhinos now face many challenges, not least because of the threat from poachers. The demand for rhino horn has soared in recent years. Rhinos are being killed for their horn at a rate that campaigners say is unsustainable. At least one rhino is being killed every day.
We've now got a massive poaching crisis that is, putting them right on the brink of extinction again. We're losing animals at an appalling rate. South Africa alone has lost over 600 rhino in the last 15-16 months.
The sort of numbers you're talking about means that we don't have that much time.
Well, that's absolutely the point. We don't have a lot of time. If this rate of poaching continues, we're in real trouble.
And the methods being used are increasingly cruel.
Images you see of these elephant and rhino faces being hacked off to feed a market that is just driven by appalling ignorance, it seems to me, is really upsetting.
Carrots particularly going down well, aren't they?
As royal patron of the charity Tusk, Prince William has chosen to speak out in support of the project and to raise awareness of the issue.
Along with elephants, they're two of the most heavily poached animals currently in the world. And if we don't do something about them, then it's going to be a tragic loss for everyone.
So what do you actually hope to be able to achieve?
Obviously, in an ideal situation, I'd love to be able to stop poaching. But that's a massive ask and something that's going to take a lot of time.
The demand for rhino horn is driven by a market mainly in Vietnam and China. It's perceived to have medicinal properties. There's no scientific evidence to support that, but it's so sought after, it's now more expensive than gold, and seen by some as a luxury must-have.
My message to them is simply stop. It's a message about educating people and understanding that when you buy that rhino horn or when you buy ivory, you are taking this from an animal that has been slaughtered for this decorative ornament you have on your mantelpiece or you have at home. Is that really what you desire and you think is right in the world?
For someone who isn't aware of that taking place, we can have the education. What would you sit down in a room with someone who does know that that's what the situation is and are carrying on regardless?
Well, I think they're extremely ignorant, I think selfish, I think wrong, totally and utterly wrong.
Makes you angry, I can.
Yeah, it makes me very angry, yeah. It's a waste.
Prince William's passion for protecting these animals is clear, and his support for the Rhino Project at Port Lympne has been welcomed by the keepers who've worked so hard to care for the rhinos and prepare them for their return to the wild. It's been a painstaking and delicate operation, with week after week spent coaxing them into the compact crates that will be their home for the 18-hour journey to Tanzania. Overseeing the team is the world's top rhino vet, Pete Morkel.
This is pretty tricky, if we can just get them in here, not too stressful, that they don't bash around, don't hurt themselves with the loading. To me, that's almost half the job.
Where are the pressure points in the whole process?
I would say this is it. After this, I'm pretty relaxed because then you've sort of got them in the box under your control. Until they're in the box, they're not really under your control.
Come on then. Good girl. Well done.
Something Grametti, the more feisty female, proves as Pete attempts to sedate her. Eventually, she's coaxed back in.
She came in perfectly. But then we had an issue, obviously, when Pete Morkel put the needle in her bum, and that startled her, obviously. She went backing right out.
Oh. Good girl, Grametti.
Now that Grametti's sedated, staff cut and file her horn.
Get in there.
It ensures she can't injure herself on the journey, and will also make her less attractive to poachers once she reaches Africa. After several hours, all 3 rhinos are successfully crated, to the relief of the keepers who know them best and who'll be travelling with them to Tanzania.
There's bonds between keepers and the rhinos. They're such affectionate animals, which people would never think, but they're they love being fast, and there's a really huge bond, so it's a sort of a big goodbye for everybody, with, you know, here that works with them. So yeah, there'll definitely be mixed emotions from the guys that have sort of worked with them all the years, but yeah, I think everyone's delighted to go. Okay, Paul? Yep. Alrighty, good girl. Good girl, Bob.
It's an anxious moment for the freight team planning the logistics. This is unusual cargo, and it's not certain that the crates will fit.
Too tight.
And it's heavy work. Each rhino weighs around a ton.
I'm all right this side.
Good. Cool. That's good, that's good. That's it, that's enough. Cheers, guys.
Three black rhinos travelling from the UK to Tanzania to help boost a dangerously dwindling population. These animals have incredibly large appetites, so they cautiously open the crates to feed them at 38,000 feet. Africa's highest mountain, Kilimanjaro, rises up through the clouds. The rhinos have almost reached their final destination. After a day in transit, the rhinos finally reach the sanctuary of Mkomazi National Park. But their arrival means renewed tension for the keepers.
I'm not sure which, probably open up from the front. And Zawadi will be first, because she's sort of like the calmest and most settled. And then I think Grameti's going to come next, and then Monduli. So yeah, so just sort of open up, just make sure everything's all quiet, set it up, really put some food and bits and pieces inside.
The long trip has required constant, painstaking effort from the team. The strain is beginning to show.
Just be really careful, Mama. Okay. No sudden movement or anything. It's fine.
It's a huge responsibility. These animals are so valuable. Mistakes can't be made.
Get the bottom one.
But then, Zawadi emerges into an African sun.
Hello, sweet girl. Hello, sweet girl. How you doing?
And to the obvious delight and relief of the team.
All right, sweetie. You want to come out? Hello, love. Good girl, darling. Come and have a little explore. Oh, she's a steady girl. Hello. Come on, then. Come on, Bubs. Hello, love.
It's huge. You know, it's amongst one of the biggest things in my life to be able to bring these animals, condition them to the wild and get them breeding here and bring them back. It's fantastic. How sad that we have to go to a European source to back up our rhinos.
These specially built bomas, or pens, will be the rhinos' home for the next few weeks. It's a culture shock for them. The heat, the dry, dusty earth, and the foreign food. It can be a confusing and disorientating experience. They'll have to be de-stressed and made as comfortable as possible before they're released into the wild.
Hello, girl. Sweetie pie. Wonder what goes on in their heads, you know, after what they've gone through. I've probably got to sort of figured it out. So they're pretty chuffed with this weather. Yeah, they've got characters. They're not so stupid. You know, if you work enough with them, you see they're actually a reasonably intelligent animal, you know, and one can become very fond of them. It really is gutting to see animals which you know particularly well being poached and being poached in a very, you know, unpleasant way. Often these things are still alive when their horns are cut off. I mean, there's cases of animals which have, you know, taken weeks to die because, you know, the top of their head's literally been cut off and they've slowly rotted away. No, it's a disgusting, you know, most unpleasant death for the animals.
That's the threat Zawadi, Grumeti and Monduli now face. And that's why they'll have protection 24 hours a day. There's an electrified and alarmed fence around the perimeter of the sanctuary. Former Tanzanian army guards patrol. They're armed and ready to kill or be killed to protect their rhinos.
There is a shoot-to-kill policy here, and rightly so, because the guy will fire on him because the stakes are so high. How many robberies do you get in England where people are shot for 2,000–3,000 quid, let alone 20,000? Yeah. Everything we've set up here is to stop my guys being killed, because that's, you know, that's not right, and to stop them killing people because it's bad karma.
The night guard are on patrol. The cover of darkness makes this the most opportune time for poachers. And the most dangerous for the watchman. An alarm's triggered, a call to arms. This time, a false alarm.
No poachers, is impala. Is impala.
But they know the threat is always there.
It's not only the animals dying, it's all these, you know, game rangers, people in the field who are getting killed in the process. And I hear just the other day a ranger in Kenya had his head cut off by poachers, and this is all driven by this demand for rhino horn.
The prices paid for the horn are so high it's very tempting for local people to be drawn in. Mkomazi has set up a school project to try to persuade them and the future generation that there's more value in having the animals alive, for tourists who'll pay to see them in their natural habitat.
20 years ago, they think the wildlife is just a food and the place for making money. But now they change mind. They know they can find the money from tourists. Because we teach them, we give them education where environmental and the endangered species. Some of them, they don't know there are endangered species in the world. They think all animals is the same and to kill is good, to find some meat and something.
It's the sort of initiative Prince William also supports.
There's always going to be this man, you know, wildlife environment conflict. We have to be more clever and more sensitive about how we manage that. And we need local communities. You can't do it just by saying, you know, here we are in the West saying, right, you've got to look after these rhino, you've got to look after these elephants because we want to see them there. Yeah. They need to understand it's for their own benefit as well that they have them.
Security and education can play their part, but clearly more needs to be done in the short term. Legalising the sale of horn is another option, but many fear that would only fuel demand, a demand which is already exploding in emerging economies in Asia. Sections of a new Asian elite are willing to pay whatever it takes, and a new international smuggling mafia is invading Africa to satisfy that demand. For them, Pete Morkel has an extreme solution.
Feeding poisonous horns into the market, either, you know, so it gets to the end user and they're frightened off from using it, or should they use it, they'll die in the process, or just to frighten off people from actually poaching animals because they know these horns are going to be no use to them. I don't know why it should be seen as such an unacceptable option. Quite frankly, if you see what horrendous deaths these rhinos die from poaching, I think it's only fair enough that the people who drive it could end up in a similar situation.
It's a controversial option, but a non-lethal version of it is being trialled in South Africa. Conservationists say there's a limit to what else they can do now. Serious political pressure is urgently needed.
Obviously the two nations whose citizens are particularly involved as far as using it are China and Vietnam, and I think their names are being hugely tarnished in Africa by being part of this, and I think it's a great tragedy that their governments are not doing more.
China says it is trying to tackle the problem with recent large-scale clampdowns on illegal wildlife trade.
You need the cooperation of the Chinese government, otherwise it doesn't mean anything.
And do you see that happening? There's a recent raid of 100,000 officers going in to shut down illegal wildlife trading. Is that a step in the right direction?
It's, bailing out the Titanic with a thimble. I think China is a culture that if it comes from the top, stop this, it will stop.
Someone's just got to tell them that they're just impoverishing other countries and just ripping off their resources. I mean, if China can get a one-child family together, it can stop the rhino horn trade, I'm sure.
For those working to save the black rhino, it feels like they're fighting a war.
I think ultimately we will win, but I think it's going to come at a great cost. I think we're going to lose in the process maybe one or two of the subspecies. I think we're going to lose a lot of the genetics. There's obviously people who are going to, be traumatized or die, and I guess ultimately I'm optimistic we will win, but I think it's going to be messy.